focus from start to finish. It's a great formula for winning football. +2 in the takeaway battle. All in all, I thought it was pretty efficient, really, in every phase of the game.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
Last Tuesday, 1 week ago today, I was driving into work. I was on the Beltline coming through Madison, going by the Park Street exit. I remember this very clearly. And I got a buzz on my phone and a notification from Adam Schefter that the Jets had fired Robert Saleh. And I was in my car. I went, yes! Not because I really care who coaches the Jets, but because, oh my God, what an incredible story. What an incredible bit of content for the show, right? And for Bill's show, right? For the whole day across the network. A huge, juicy bit of red meat to talk about. I think Robert Saleh was that good of a head coach. I think you'd have a difficult time building a statistical case that he's a good head coach. Good defensive coordinator, a good coach, but maybe not a good head coach. At least if the metric for a good head coach is winning games. I understand he wasn't always playing with a full deck, quarterback, offense, what the general manager was giving him, of course. But I don't know that you could look over the years and say, actually, Robert Saleh is an awesome head coach. He just hasn't gotten a chance to show it. No, I think coaches, even in tricky situations with lesser quarterbacks or with lesser personnel, if you're a good coach, you have opportunities to show it. I just don't think Robert Saleh ever did. I didn't care if he was retained. All right, if the Jets want to go and shake their season like a snow globe, go off. Good for me. It's great content. 1 week later, almost to the moment, like almost to the time, I was driving into work this morning. I was somewhere on the Beltline. I don't think I was by the Park Street exit. I think I was a little bit. I think everything was closer towards Monona. It doesn't matter. I get a notification that Davante Adams has been traded to the New York Jets. And in my car, once again, I go, yes! Not because I think Davante Adams all of a sudden makes the Jets a Super Bowl contender. I don't think it changes the fate of the Raiders. They're in the tank. They're screwed. I don't think it, big picture, completely and totally changes the fate of the Jets. It might help them out a little bit. We'll talk about it. But again, what an awesome bit of content. What a juicy piece of red meat, and better for everybody. Davante Adams was doing nobody any good playing for the Raiders out in Vegas. Why? Why does he need to be out there? What good is he doing out there? Oh, sure. I still don't think the Jets are going to Super Bowl, but God, I'm excited to watch him with Rodgers. It's more fun. It's better for everyone. Better for fantasy football. Better for talk shows like this one. It's just better. Both of these Jet stories, Tuesday morning stories, Tuesday morning news dumps the last 2 weeks. Overjoyed with both. This is the Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills, and we are going to talk a lot of Wisconsin sports tonight, and not just going to become the Jets hour for the next 55 minutes, although I do want to start with that story. I want to start with Adams becoming a Jet. We're going to talk with Zach Heilprin, Badger football. Got a big win against Rutgers, although some of you didn't seem to think that win was as big as I thought it was. So we'll try to rectify that and get to the truth, get to the heart of the matter with Zach. He's our sports director, WOZN in Madison. You hear him on the updates and the camp with Jesse Temple, and occasionally now Ben Kenny back in the fold as well. Excellent podcast. That's where I go for my Badgers coverage. So Zach will be here in about a half hour to wrap up the show at the very end, because lots of people, Zach most notably, say that I can't talk college football. Grant, you can't do it. Big Ten expansion, you're not ready for it. Program building with Luke Fickell, you're not up to the task. You can't talk college football. How will you respond, Grant? How will you answer, Grant? Well, we talked a lot of Badgers yesterday. We're going to have Zach, and we're going to dip down to the Division III level. First-time guest of the program, head coach Clayt Birmingham of your UW Stout Blue Devils, who pulled a massive upset over Whitewater on Saturday. First time that program has beat Whitewater since the early 2000s, since long before Coach Birmingham has been there. Birmingham has been there for 15 years. He's been coaching there for a decade and a half. His program had never beaten Whitewater. They pulled it off on Saturday. It was a scene at Donanona Williams Stadium. So we'll talk with Coach Birmingham to wrap up the show at about 5:45 for the last 10 minutes or so. Some of you, that'll be right up your alley. Some of you are like, oh my God, I could not care less. Okay, that's why we're going to do it at the end of the show. It's not that big of a deal. We're not going to wedge it in between Davante Adams talk and Packers talk. It'll be fine. We'll survive. Little Division III football. The WEAC is fun. It's electric football. It's a very, 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 very good product. 608-321-1670 if you would like to call or text the show. We're going to take our first break a little bit earlier. So if you have thoughts on what's going on with the Jets and Davante Adams, you can get in before Zach drops by at 4:30. You can comment on the live stream as well, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at Wisco Grant. Everyone today is mocking the Jets. And that's fair. The Jets are the Jets. They are a punchline. They are a hapless organization. They have been for a long time. Woody Johnson would seem to be a bit of a knob, just as a football owner. I always wonder, how damaging can a bad owner be? And how helpful can a good owner be? Like, what exactly, how much can a bad owner drag down a team? And how much can a good owner build up a team? Like, I want to see the spectrum. So we talk about good ownership, bad ownership. Woody Johnson is a bad owner, rash, impulsive, maybe as evidenced by firing Robert Saleh, although Robert Saleh wasn't a good coach. You could argue that they should have stuck with him longer throughout this year and they shouldn't have, shaken the snow globe the way that they did. That's fine, but let's not act like he fired some, tried and true, proven, successful head coach. Look, you want to make fun of the Jets, make fun of the Jets. They're the Jets. That's what they're for. But when they acquired Davante Adams this morning, so many people on sports radio, sports television are rolling their eyes. Oh, God. Dysfunctional organization, doing dysfunctional things. Okay, make fun of the Jets. They're a mess. Do we actually not think, do we actually not believe that Davante Adams will help this team? You want to make fun of the Jets? Make fun of, you want to crown them? Crown them. Crown them as the losers that they are. Make fun of them, sure. Are we going to act like they shouldn't have done this? Like this was a bad trade for them to give up a third-round pick in an all-in year to get a wide receiver, the likes of which is normally not available, has already played with the quarterback that they're already all in around. Like, why wouldn't the Jets do this? I don't understand why everyone's beating up on the Jets. Well, I get it, because they're the Jets. Again, but let's just talk specifically about this move. This is a no-brainer. And I said it a month ago. You're already this far down the Aaron Rodgers path. You're already this far into it. What's a third-round pick for 2 years of salary and a little bit of a cap hit if you move on early for Davante Adams? What's the big deal? People are responding to this today like the Jets just traded for the corpse of Randy Moss, who's been retired for 10 years. You know what I mean? Davante Adams is still very good. He's got history with Aaron Rodgers. He's available. The Jets are all in. Duh. Of course they should make this move. Now, I don't think it'll turn him into a Super Bowl contender, which, I'm not trying to throw unfair expectations at the Jets by saying, well, it's supposed to be about a Super Bowl. That's not my words. That's theirs. Aaron Rodgers showed up in New York and was talking about Super Bowls and Lombardis. And a couple weeks ago, Aaron Rodgers said, all right, the first step is to win. The next step is to learn how to dominate. Like this organization, this team, this quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, have had very high expectations ever since this thing started and culminated with the trade of Aaron Rodgers from Green Bay last year. Fine. Aim high. I love it. Swing big. I don't think it's realistic. I don't think it's going to pay off. But say what you need to say to get your fans jacked up, and why not set the bar high? And if you come up short, well, whatever. 31 other NFL teams are going to come up short too. That's fine. I don't think Davante Adams will turn them into a Super Bowl contender, but he will help a lot. So many people, when this trade happened today, and I just watched a lot of sports television, listened to a lot of sports radio today, are like, well, I watched the Jets last night. They got a lot of problems. Davante Adams not solving those problems. What? Converting in the red zone? He will absolutely help solve that problem. He will absolutely help. Well, there are issues, the O-line. Okay, but Davante Adams will get open quickly and allow the ball to come out quicker. That will help. I watched the game last night, came down to the final possession, and the Jets couldn't punch it into the end zone. Davante Adams absolutely helps the Jets win last night's game. I think he probably would have helped them beat the Broncos. Again, I don't think he's going to help them win a Super Bowl, but they'd be 2 or 3 wins better with him right now. And I know that sounds insane. I know that sounds crazy, but they were right there with the Broncos. They were right there with the Bills last night, who I think are excellent. Josh Allen is awesome, and the Bills are going to win that division for a reason. I don't know. Everyone's taking a dump all over the Jets, and they're the Jets, so that's fine. But let's not pretend that this move doesn't make sense for them. Oh, dysfunctional organization does dysfunctional things. Okay, they are dysfunctional, but wide receivers available. He's got history playing with this quarterback. He wants to be moved. You don't have enough weaponry on offense, which some of us knew coming into the year. others have had to come around to that. It's like, wait, Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall and a bunch of slaps, that's not good enough? No, it's not good enough. It never was. So no, I think this makes all the sense in the world, and I'm excited to watch it. I don't think it's going to turn the Jets into a Super Bowl contender, but I never believed they even had a chance to be a Super Bowl contender, even before Rodgers popped his Achilles. Let's take a call or two before we move on. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This is Jeff from Chippewa.
Hey, Jeff. What's going on?
Hey, I was just thinking about this Davante Adams deal.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a good move for the Jets, but what I really am thinking about is that Raiders are a place where receivers go to die.
Well,
think back at when Randy Moss was there. He did nothing.
And here's what I don't get, Jeff. The Raiders elected to pay none of Davante Adams' salary. They're like, no, we're not paying it. They get a third-round pick. Why wouldn't the Raiders eat as much of that money as possible to try to get a better draft pick? They're rebuilding. Like, I get why the Raiders are trading him, but if I ran the Raiders, I'm like, I want to pay as much money for Adams as possible so we get more picks. Because we're not. What do they need the money for right now? I don't get that either. The Raiders are just as dysfunctional as the Jets. They're a mess.
Right, and then look at what Moss did the year he went to New England.
Yeah,
30 touchdowns.
I don't think Davante Adams. I mean, Aaron Rodgers. The Jets might not score 30 touchdowns the rest of the year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think he'll be great. Don't you?
Yeah, I think Adams is a great receiver. He's at the back end of his career, but I think that with a quarterback like Rodgers, he'll make a big difference for the Jets.
I think so.
Not a Super Bowl, but
no. But I never thought Super Bowl was in the cards, Jeff. And sorry, I want to get one more person before we move on. I appreciate the call. I never thought that an aging Aaron Rodgers, even before an Achilles injury, was winning a Super Bowl. I just saw them lose too many times in the playoffs in games where they should have, could have won. I can only see Aaron Rodgers and the Packers come up short so many times in the playoffs before I just say, you know what? It's not going to happen. It's just not happening. And I know one year it was the special teams, and I know the other, the defense. It's the whole thing. It's the whole history of Aaron Rodgers and the Packers in the playoffs. I've seen them fail too many times to think that he's going to go to a conference with better quarterbacks and somehow go on a run. I never believed it from the rip, even if him and Garrett Wilson did have great chemistry, and they don't. And even if Breece Hall turned into a superstar running back and was productive in this offense, and he hasn't. And yeah, now they're going to get Davante Adams, and I think that'll help him be more effective on third and fourth downs and in the red zone, which they desperately need. They needed last night. I think if Davante Adams was on the field last night, the Jets win that game because it was very close. And the difference was the Jets had to settle for field goals, and they missed them, right? That was the difference last night. I never thought they were a Super Bowl team in the first place, but that doesn't mean that they can just fold up shop and not try. This is the NFL. The Jets are giving it all they got around Aaron Rodgers, and I'm not going to drag them for this. You can drag them for a lot of other things, but you can't drag them for this. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This is Hot Take Jake. Let me talk to you.
Hit me.
I mean, I love this. This is so much entertainment.
It's fun.
These two deserve each other. They deserve to just it's romantic. They get to rot and die together in New York.
The fact is, and I have the picture. I'll throw it here on the live stream. So Rodgers did the McAfee show earlier today. And when he joined, Davante Adams popped up behind him. And it was a little bit of a weird image. They look like, this is the comparison I made, Hot Jake. When a friend of yours FaceTimes you with their wife or their girlfriend to say, we're engaged or we're pregnant, like that's the image of Rodgers with Adams over his shoulder FaceTiming into the McAfee show today. That's the visual that I got.
Well, you have two diva ass clowns that just everything always needs to be about them. So yeah, they deserve each other. But I'm surprised nobody's brought this up yet. This is, to me, when the Vikings had Favre and they traded for the corpse of Randy Moss. That's all this is. This is just the desperation heave. It's not going to work, and they're going to just reap what they sow when Garrett Wilson's getting pissed off because he's not getting any balls thrown his way because 17's just being locked on. So it's delicious. I can't wait to watch it fail. I can't wait to watch it blow up, and I can't wait to see these two losers fail again.
When you say fail, what do you think the rest of their season looks like? Where do you think this is going? Because there's levels to failing. Failing to me is Rodgers gets hurt, barbs are thrown everywhere in the media. It's a mess. It melts down. Everyone is fired. It's embarrassing. I don't think that will happen. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but I think they're going to be fun to watch. They're going to win more games.
I think they'll get a little juice out of it, and then Rodgers is going to start keying in on 17. Teams will just be able to game plan for that, and it's just going to end up in mediocrity. Eventually, everybody's going to be upset. Again, all the Garrett Wilsons of the world, they're going to be angry that why is my spot being taken by this guy? Why am I not getting the number one guy in targets? And it's going to be delicious. I can't wait.
That's another thing that I thought of this morning is like, I wonder what Garrett Wilson thinks of all this. And wouldn't it be funny if Garrett Wilson all of a sudden comes out and he's like, you know what? I want to trade. Like that would be chaos. That would be chaos. That would be failure. It's a hot take Jake's point. I think they'll be fun. And by the way, keying in on Adams, can we stop pretending like the Packers weren't really good? Rodgers won 2 MVPs keying on Davante Adams. Now, fell apart a little bit in the playoffs. The lack of chemistry with a second or third option hurt him in the playoffs a little bit. But we're not talking about the Jets trying to get through the AFC Championship game. We're talking about them trying to beat Pittsburgh on Sunday Night Football coming up this weekend. We'll talk more about this. I have some breaking Packers news. It's not earth-shattering, crazy Packers news, which is why I'm going to hold it through this break, but I think it'll be news that a lot of Packers fans are very happy to hear. So we'll get to that in just a couple minutes. The Wisco Sports Show. We'll be right back.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
You know what really sheds light on this whole situation is how Aaron and Devontae have to look back and go, God, we had a pretty damn good in Green Bay. It doesn't get much better. Was it perfect? Oh, obviously, there were some things that you would have liked them maybe a little more aggressive in free agency. Maybe, be a little more aggressive in contract talks with us. But this notion that, like, they acted like they were on a 747 and they were sitting in the back of the plane next to the hitter. No, like, you guys were in first class and you got bored because it was a long flight and you thought there was better out there. And there just wasn't. And you chose the Raiders, the Jets, and then you've kind of forced the Raiders to trade you to the Jets because Aaron wanted you and you wanted out. It's like, it's kind of sad.
That's John Middlecoff. I'm really starting to like his podcast. I really like his podcast with Colin Cowherd. It's the Simmons and Russillo Sunday Night NFL pod. It's that equivalent. I listened to that a lot last year. It's what I normally listen to on my drive-in from into work on Monday. But now Middlecoff will throw up a reaction podcast on his YouTube channel at the volume. And I was watching his Adams and I didn't agree with it all, but I'm like, damn, this is entertaining. And I like that analogy, right? Rodgers and Davante Adams thought they had it so bad when truly they were just in first class and it was a long flight and they just got bored. Now, I think some revise history a little bit too much with Rodgers. The Packers did their fair share in moving Rodgers along. They drafted his replacement, right? Like, now they also paid Rodgers, gave him an extension, right? Kind of placated what he wanted and what he needed. All right, we'll bring Randall Cobb back. So it's not like the Packers gave him a swift kick and pushed him out the door, but it's not like Rodgers woke up one day and was all of a sudden like, I'm out, get me out, I want to leave. That was, it took two to tango there. Adams was more, I want to leave. So Davante Adams, I think it's fair to go back and say, hey man, you kind of wanted out of Green Bay. Maybe if you could go back, like, would you do it differently? And he would probably say no. He made a lot of money in Vegas. He got to be closer to home, got to play with Derek Carr for what, half a dozen games. So I think Adams in a retrospective conversation like that one I played for Middlecoff, I think Adams is a little bit more fair to criticize because the Packers played their fair share in escorting Rodgers out of Green Bay as well. 608-321-1670. Time for a couple more calls. Zach Heilprin going to join us to talk Badgers at 4:35. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant, how we doing?
I thought it might be you because I saw you commenting on the live stream that you have a Brewers parallel, and I'm like, I bet he's the one waiting on hold.
Well, why can't the Brewers go all in every year? Why can't they match the Mets payroll?
Well, because they literally can't. They do not have the money to do that.
They have the poorest owner in baseball, right? Yeah. And so I did a little research department in action on a Tuesday afternoon for no reason other than sports talk radio. I didn't realize how poor Mark Davis is. Like when you're talking about NFL owners,
yeah,
I was curious because you asked the question, why didn't they just eat the salary? And I'm thinking, man, they just built a hell of a stadium. They're investing a ton out there. They can't pay their fans to show up, right? Every time you see, it's kind of like the LA situation where it's just other people's fans in the stadium.
Yeah.
They're having a really hard time building that natural homegrown audience. I think, and as of 30 minutes ago, breaking news, Tom Brady approved as a 10% share owner of the Raiders. So they're out there selling, they're out there crowdsourcing funding for this team. I think the Raiders got a revenue problem. And I think offloading Davante Adams, not taking that, like $17 million doesn't sound a lot in the grand scheme of it. But, that's $17 million that is going to come off the P&L sheet at the end of the year. And I think Mark Davis right now, that might be what he's focused on.
But my line of thinking, all things being the same, all financials being the same, would be the correct one, right? If strategically, if you have the money, and maybe the Raiders don't, you would want to pay more for Davante Adams to get better picks in return. You're rebuilding. That's the way you'd want to go about it. And Vagabond John, you bring up owner finances and, myself included, I think a lot of NFL fans we're kind of in the dark and we don't fully understand how the finances behind the scenes work. We think all these owners just have this massive fund and it's up to them whether or not they want to spend it. When you guarantee a player's contract, fully guaranteed, not practical guaranteed, when you fully guarantee a player's contract, that money has to sit physically, cash, in escrow somewhere. It has to be available. And I didn't know that until recently. Like I think we could all benefit from some NFL financial literacy courses. I don't know. Maybe I should have somebody on explain this stuff to us.
Get that Ingalls guy, the cap guy. Get on Twitter. Get the interns on getting that guy on as a guest who could talk some nerd finance stuff.
I was in a Twitter space one time with him and LaCroix Butler. Let me be correct. LaCroix Butler threw some insults at Ken Ingalls, really for no reason. It was really funny, but I don't know. I'm scared to reach out because I don't know if he remembers that or not. Were you in that space?
I have no idea. Was it a Wednesday night? If it was a Catholic hour, yes. If it was a weekend, probably not. But if it was Wednesday night, normal catechism Catholic hour on in the spaces, I was probably there. Otherwise, probably not. But I do think it's an interesting question. Like we make that assumption. I think you're right, NFL owners. But the highest owner I think is Denver. He's got like $57 billion. Mark Davis is down there at like $2.7 million. So I think just like Major League Baseball, there is a variety and a spectrum when it comes to NFL owners and what they can pay. And while we don't know a lot, we do know the signals. And anytime a business is crowdsourcing for more cash with a guy like Tom Brady, I do think that's a signal that they need some fun. So I think that answers that. Is this a good move? From a football standpoint for the Raiders, I don't know what their plan is. And that's an off-season topic, but like, what the hell is their plan going forward? They don't have a quarterback. Like, who's good? Max Crosby might be out. So I think they're just trying to offload assets, offload the P&L, and try to start fresh next year with Tom Brady having a little bit more say.
So, sure. Okay. Well, let's try to figure out what the Raiders are doing here. Vagabond John, I appreciate it. The Raiders traded multiple top picks and paid a lot of money to give Davante Adams a home in Vegas. They gave up a first and a second and then gave him a huge extension. Okay. All right, so we're being aggressive. They thought Derek Carr was good enough to build around. You would have to think, right? Because they acquired Adams. If they didn't believe in their quarterback on some level, they wouldn't have done that. It took them, 5-6 games to be like, you know what? Actually, never mind. Derek Carr isn't good enough. Okay, fine. Derek Carr isn't good enough. So then they go into the draft. What do? They draft another tight end. They had Michael Mayer. So then they take Brock Bowers. It's okay, so great. You have 2 great tight ends, an edge rusher, a top flight wide receiver making top flight money you gave top flight draft compensation for, and no quarterback to throw any of them the ball, and no plan to get a quarterback to throw any of the ball. This offseason, they signed Gardner Minshew. Okay, there's worse options, I guess. But then 4 games in, Antonio Pierce is like, well, we need to evaluate quarterback. Okay, if Gardner Minshew was up for evaluation after 4 games, then he wasn't good enough to be the option and the choice coming into the year. They're just a mess. They're an absolute mess. And they should probably trade Max Crosby, but he fits the Raiders so well. He's like the one thing. And out in Vegas, Bill brought this up earlier. We were just there for Super Bowl. I was there then like 2 months later for a concert. Max Crosby's everywhere. He's the face of the Raiders. He is the Raider way. He projects a certain attitude and carries himself in a certain fashion that's perfect for the Raiders. And they're probably going to have to trade him, or they probably should trade him. What a mess. I have no clue what the Raiders are trying to do. At least I know what the Jets are trying to do. I know what the Jets are trying to do probably isn't going to work on the level they want it to, but at least I get what they're doing. I know what the Raiders is doing. I know that's not going to work. And I also have no clue what they're doing. They're 0 for 2. The Jets are at least 1 for 2 in this mid-off, this battle of mid between really, really dysfunctional organizations. Let's take a break. We'll talk college football. Zach Heilprin, our sports director, WOZN. You hear him on the camp. You hear him on the updates. He is exemplary. His Badgers coverage, second to none, and I'm excited for him to join us next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
It's a really solid football team. I think they do the things they do really well. You know, they're physical. They play well up front. I thought last year they controlled the line of scrimmage, and particularly better than any other game that we played last year. When I say they controlled the line of scrimmage, that's probably me not wanting to say that they dominated us up front on both sides of the ball, but in a lot of ways they dominated us up front on both sides of the ball in a lot of other areas.
That's Luke Fickell starting to talk about this next opponent, their upcoming opponent, Northwestern. They go down to Evanston. Different stadium situation, although it's not like Northwestern used to play in this massive, like they're going from a small kind of high schoolish feeling field to an even smaller, probably more high school feeling-ish field. So it's not going to be that out of the ordinary, but it will be a little different. They go down there on Saturday. It's a team that last year, especially in the first half, really pushed them around. now joining us, our fearless sports director. You hear his voice on the updates. You hear him on the camp as well. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Zach Heilprin, who now joins us on Twitter at Zach Heilprin. Zach, hello. Good evening.
Good evening, Grant.
So can we establish something before we begin talking about what comes next for the Badgers?
Yeah, you are not a casual college football guy. I don't know why you suggest that I said that I don't think you can talk college football. I heard you earlier in your show say that. I take umbrage on that comment. Maybe in the past I have said that, perhaps a year or two ago. I have not said that in quite some time. So I believe in your college football knowledge. I believe that you are, as indicated on your little introductory thing right there, college football lover. So yeah, I mean, I enjoy talking college football with you. You have upped your game.
Oh, well, that actually does mean quite a lot coming from you. That's not actually what I wanted to establish, but we can establish that. And now I want to establish one more thing. We all thought they were going to go to Piscataway and get pushed around, right? Like at least I thought it. I thought most people thought that that's what was going to happen. And I just want to make sure I have that clear, because now everyone's acting like they were always supposed to beat up Rutgers because Rutgers sucks. And I feel like that's not where we were last week at this time.
Rutgers was favored in that game. So
thank you.
Yeah. I picked them to win, but I think it was more so just because the other two times they've been to Rutgers, they absolutely crushed them, and they went back and did it again. They outscored them 131-10 in the 3 games in Piscataway, which is just insane after what they did on Saturday. So yeah, I thought it was going to be a much tighter game. I certainly did not see them doing what they did to them on Saturday, but I did pick them to win, but to do it in the way that they did, 42-7, to put up over 500 yards in another game in back-to-back weeks, in a Big Ten game in back-to-back weeks for the first time since 2010. Like, I get it. It's not, Rutgers isn't Oregon or Ohio State, but it was still a pretty darn good, well thought of team heading into that game, and Wisconsin pushed them around and did what they wanted to do.
Well, and here's what's frustrating. I've asked multiple questions to Jesse the last couple of weeks, and he's had to kind of pump the brakes on what I'm trying to drive at. And he said, Grant, they're not a good team. So we can't think about them. We can't talk about them like they're a good team. When I say, Jesse, why can't they play 4 straight quarters? Why do they start faster? He's like, because they're not good. So that's the lens through which I watched Saturday's game. And that tells me that this is, like, is it hyperbolic to say that's the most important or the biggest win of the Luke Fickell era so far? Because that's how I saw it. And I didn't even think that was that crazy of a take, but it got met with some pushback last night.
I think it was the most impressive 4-quarter win because there's not many to choose from,
well,
right? Like, let's be fair about it. There ain't much to choose from. You would be saying what, Minnesota last year?
Yeah,
maybe it would be like the most complete one, but that game was a game in the first half. Look, Jesse, it's funny because well, he doesn't want to be hyperbolic, right? He doesn't want to,
he's a
say
reporter.
he gets. Yeah, he wants to rein himself in a little bit. I asked him last week before the Rutgers game, is there anything that could happen in the Rutgers game that would change your opinion about what this team is and what it can be? And he's like, no, not at all. And then on Monday or on Sunday's show, I said, was there something that happened in that game that might have changed your opinion a little bit? And he said, yes. So he is a week-to-week guy, but that's also college football at this point, right?
Totally.
2 weeks ago, we're talking about this maybe the worst Wisconsin team and how long. And then this week, today's show, we said, is this the best Wisconsin team since 2019? It might be. Like, that's the type of stuff that we're doing in college football because it is a week-to-week sport.
And look, the Minnesota game is the other game, and it's very much a sports radio. Was this the most important win of the Luke Fickell era, right? It's a sports radio topic. It's a very low-hanging, but I'm going to grab this low-hanging fruit. The Minnesota win last year meant to me this year was not at all what we hoped for, not at all a success based on expectations, but great to salvage a win against a rival, kind of in the moment on that Saturday, a very isolated thing, good for Braylon Allen. I will remember him better as a Badger for helping us secure the Axe. This win felt like another step in the right direction after taking care of a really bad team, then going on a week later to take care of a a team that's much better. And I think they might have found just a little something on offense. I think between the physicality of running the ball, mixing in the shot plays, I seriously think between what Fickle wants to do and Longo wants to do, they might have calibrated in on what they want this offense to be.
I think they might have both bought into what it can be. I think Fickle wanted to establish that physical nature to this team, which was not evident at all times last year, despite having a physical back in Braylon Allen. He was dinged up. He wasn't obviously healthy throughout the entire year, but they want to be a physical team in the run game. And why you brought Phil Longo here was to have some spice in the passing game, and they have some spice in the passing game now with Vinny Anthony taking some of those deep shots, and obviously Treshke Kahuna, what he did against Purdue, and had some big-time plays on Saturday, including saving Braden Locke from interception there in the fourth quarter, that then Tyree Walker, the next play, went for a touchdown. They have been extremely, extremely balanced these last 2 weeks. They're averaging right around 300 yards passing, right around 250 yards rushing. It has been exactly what Luke Fickell wanted this team to look like. And he didn't, he was asked about that this week. Jesse asked him about this week. Is this the offense that you imagined? And he's like, yeah, but we still have all this room to grow. But it is a very good, I think, start to what they want this eventually to look like on a week-to-week basis. Again, Rutgers was beat up a little bit, having been to Nebraska, and we're missing some guys on defense, but that Wisconsin wasn't doing this to teams earlier in the season. They weren't doing this to Western Michigan. They weren't doing this to South Dakota. They have done it these last 2 weeks, and they have another chance to show that this is who they are on Saturday when they go down to Northwestern, another team that isn't great, but they've struggled with and struggled mightily last year at home against, got punched in the mouth. It was an embarrassing loss. That's Luke Fickell talking. So they have these chances, and yes, offensively, I think they, as you said, found something.
So Zach Heilprin here, our sports director, and listen to the camp with Jesse. Where do we stand with Ben, by the way? Does Ben tap in and do post-game streams? Like, how do I best?
Yeah, I heard. Yeah. So because Jesse's covering the game, he obviously can't jump on the post-game. And so, yeah, Ben has been nice enough. Now, unfortunately, this past weekend, we would have done one, but because the Phillies choked, those are his words, not mine, choked. He was on the road, I guess, on Sunday or on Saturday, and so he wasn't available to do the post game on Rutgers. But we will be live up on the camp YouTube coming up on Saturday, and all the away games will be there.
Okay. I wanted to make sure
the camp post game host. The camp post game host. Yeah.
Post-game immediate reaction host on the camp. Yes. Let's talk rushing, and then I want to circle back to passing. So Chez Mellusi is out, and I said this, and you say this as delicately as possible, of course. I don't want to say blessing in disguise, because Chez Mellusi is really good, and I think he made a brilliant move transferring. I thought this was the right place for him to come. His body just didn't let him take advantage of it. But Luke Fickell was talking about consolidating the running back room and allowing these guys to get in a little bit more of a rhythm. Has Tyree Walker really benefited from that? Because I think he's really started to emerge as a feature back, the likes of which, we're used to seeing. A guy who can take the rock, 20 carries a game, and be really, really physical and effective.
Yeah, the fact that Chez Mellusi stepped away in the week that they were going to consolidate carries is very interesting, Grant. That you would say it was a blessing in disguise. I would say that the reason Chez Mellusi is no longer here is because they felt like Tyree Walker could be this guy that if you give him 20 carries, 25 carries, whatever it's going to end up being, right around that, 18 to 25, that he's going to be able to produce. And in the first 2 games where he's been the guy, he's produced. He's gone 94 yards and 3 scores. He's gone 198 and 3 touchdowns. He also obviously had a couple touchdowns against USC. He is a perfect fit for what they want to do offensively, which is, bludgeon some people on the ground. And this offensive line is starting to move some bodies, and he's been a perfect person to put in there. And then obviously they wanted to get Darian Dupree involved a little bit more as well. And some of his unique talents is probably not carrying the ball in the fourth quarter against a team that's, you're just throwing him out there for no reason. You want him involved in when the game still matters, and maybe use some of his receiving ability. And I think we'll see that expanded as we go along with the season. But that was what they wanted to do, and it has worked out perfectly so far. The only little, thing that has been throwing that into whack a little bit is just what Cade Yakameli has done every time he touches the ball, which is produce. And so that's not a bad problem to have, but it can be if everyone's not on the same page with how this is all going to play out. From all word, Cade Yakameli's on board. I don't know that his family's all on board because his mom is retweeting everybody saying he deserves more carries. So we've got that dynamic to it. But yeah, that running game with those two guys, I think is exactly what they were envisioning when they cut down the reps.
So, by the way, you hinted the timing of it all was very unique. Was I missing something, or with that comment, were you implying that, like, well, Grant, he said that because he knew that Chez Mellusi was stepping away? Like, what were you driving at there, so I fully understand the situation?
I think there was a conversation there, multiple conversations with Chez. Like, this is the way that we're going to go with it. We're going to concentrate on giving the ball here to Tyree Walker, and Darian Dupree is going to get some more opportunities. And it happened 4 games in, meaning potentially Chez, if he wanted to down the line, could submit for a 7th NCAA a year in the NCAA. So I think the fact that his body was not responding the way that he wanted it to was a part of it, certainly. But I think also Wisconsin's plans played into it as well.
Interesting. Okay. And it makes sense. It's like, well, if these extra carries are going to go somewhere, we have 2 4-stars that we would like to make the future of the program. We have a guy that we believe will be the feature back in Walker. And then also Yakameli, who's awesome. We want to throw him enough of a bone to feel like he's a part of this. Okay. So it makes total sense. I didn't know that, you would bring that up because that would be more of a radio guy thing. It's like, well, what happened behind the fact that you went there? There's a lot more.
Well, I'm not saying that I think there's a lot of things at play and that it was probably best for both sides that it went this way. Like if Chez wasn't completely 100% healthy, and he's not because it's just the way his body has been through a lot. And Wisconsin kind of wanted to give Tawee Walker and maybe Darian Dupree some more carries, some more opportunities, that it worked out. And just so happened to happen right at that 4-game mark.
Have the last 2 weeks been more about Braden Locke taking a step up and becoming the quarterback that the Wisconsin thought that he could be when they recruited him? They really liked him and they thought maybe he could be in fall camp. Or is this more about Vinny Anthony coming on, Trechka Kahuna coming on? What do you believe more? Which side? And you're probably going to say both. And that's
here's the thing. I think going into the year, I said that this offense was going to be better, and not necessarily because Tyler Van Dyke was going to be better than Tanner Mordecai, but because the pieces around him were going to be better in year 2, right? And it didn't necessarily work that way with Tyler Van Dyke. I'm not saying it wouldn't have. I think the success they're having now is certainly possible had Tyler been able to stay healthy. That said, I think it starts with obviously the offensive line and be able to push guys around and having Braden Locke stand back there and throw the ball over the place because he can, because no one's behind him. Like you talk about the Tretch touchdown against Purdue, he had 6 seconds to throw the ball. They rushed 3, he had 6 seconds to throw the ball. Some of the balls that he threw on Saturday were because the offensive line allowed him to have time to do it. But what Braden Locke is, the step that Braden Locke has taken is significant. Some of the deep balls have been right where they needed to be to Vinny Anthony. And there's only one person to credit for that, and that's Braden Locke. Vinny Anthony hauling him in is important, but you still have to give him a chance. And I don't know that we saw a ton of guys being given chances earlier in the year and certainly last year to have success in those situations. And Vinny Anthony has taken advantage of it. Trechka Kahuna has taken advantage of it. And I think we're going to continue to see others do so as well. But Braden Locke deserves credit for improving. I just think that there's so much more that goes into it than just saying Braden Locke is the guy. And it's the reason why Wisconsin's offense has taken a jump. It's because players around him are performing and making plays for him. And he's giving them chances to make plays at the same time.
The ultimate team sport, right? As a coach would say, everyone has to do their 1/11th at the end of the day. And Luke Fickell, go ahead. Yes.
I'm not trying to say that. Like, I'm not trying to be a cliche here. I do think it's not just one thing. Like, we can't just sit here, Braden Locke is just amazing and he's not making any mistakes and he's just tearing things up and he's dealing with an offensive line that's not any good. But he's, the the offensive line is how this team is going to succeed, and it needs to be able to run the ball. And it needs to be able to pass protect, and they've done a fantastic job of both these last 2 weeks, and they're going to be challenged extensively starting this week because they got beat up last week on the line, or last year on the line against Northwestern. But it's more goes into it than just Braden Locke being a better player.
Of course. And I know Luke Fickell, multiple comments about the offensive line and their improvement and their development. And you sent that audio to me. And you know what, Zach? I think I'm going to take a break and we might listen to some of that commentary. That might help color in this conversation. I appreciate your time. And thank you for, hyping up my college football acumen a little. I am not an expert, but I have graduated from casual status, and I appreciate that.
No problem. Big time college football lover. Big time Wisco Grant lover over here. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Zach. Zach Heilprin. Yep. Please have a good night. Thank you. Listen to the camp. Read his work, MadCitySportsZone.com. You hear him on the updates as well. Our fearless leader, our sports director, WOZN in Madison. Let's take a break. We'll hear a little bit from Luke Fickell coming up next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
It's the Wisco Sports Show. Appreciate Zach Heilprin. You can follow him on Twitter at Zach Heilprin. Outstanding Badgers analysis, always, and you can hear more of that in concert with Ben Kenny and Jesse Temple on the camp. A couple episodes a week, including a post-game show, episode out earlier this morning. And I'm sorry, Zach, I have not had a chance to listen yet. It's been a busy day. A lot of Jets news earlier this morning. Some fun crafting up Davante Adams takes. Luke Fickell earlier this week did talk about the performance of the offensive line, and to Zach's point, talked about how the pass protection has allowed Braden Locke to play better, yes, but also given him opportunities to push the ball down the field. And we've seen that Vinny Anthony, Trutch Kekahuna, and others. Here's Luke Fickell.
Everybody just sees the shot that Vinny Anthony caught, and then you start to go back at it, and you look at the pocket, and you look at the ability of Braden to kind of have some patience with it, to be able to move himself a little bit, step up, and have a free lane. Like, those are the things that sometimes people don't talk about. They just look at the shots down the field. And I think that's where, putting some pressure on the guys up front, saying, okay, it's not just pound the football. It's not just the run game. It's how clean can we keep him?
And it's also, to his point, the run game. That's a big part of it, what Tyree Walker was able to do. And Yakimelli's just hitting bombs, just explosive play after explosive play. There's a balance on an offensive line. You want those guys to be able to maul in the run game. That builds some confidence. That's fun. Offensive linemen will tell you there's nothing better than just running the ball down another team's throat, right? And Fickell talked about the offensive line not just helping Braden Locke in the passing game, but really helping Tyree Walker, Yakimelli, Dupree, those freshmen function in the running game as well.
That's where, we're doing a really good job up front. We're getting on bodies. We're giving our backs opportunities. And I think that whole thing kind of comes together. It's not just the O-line. There's a connection there with the backfield. There's a real connection with the consistency of what we're doing. And I think that's what's showing.
And I'm wondering, I know the competition is lesser, Purdue, but Rutgers is a physical team. And it's a team that they're comfortable in their ability to go out there and beat them. And I think that's a worthwhile talking point in this matchup. And that's not something that I considered. I appreciate Zach bringing that up. It's like, yeah, Rutgers might have been favored, and they might be a good team, maybe even a better team than Wisconsin. But Wisconsin has done nothing but go out to New Jersey and beat their brakes off year after year. And when you do that enough times, by the way, that was my take about the Packers potentially going to Dallas to play a playoff game down there. I kept saying as it looked like more and more that the Packers were going to make the playoffs, I'm like, I would love to go to Dallas. Not because I think Dallas is some pushover. I'm normally higher on the Cowboys and Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy than most. But Green Bay's gone down there how many times and beat them up? Those games were with Rodgers, sure, but there have been other guys on that team. The Packers are not afraid of going down to Dallas. They do not fear that team. They do not fear that stadium. And I think that element was probably at play with Wisconsin going out to Piscataway to play in New Jersey against Rutgers last weekend. Certainly a part of it. I appreciate Zach making that point. 2 minutes. We'll get an update from Zach Heilprin, come back, talk more about the Badgers if you want, but get back into your thoughts about the Davante Adams trade too.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, it's an off day for the Packers. They're going to get back to work tomorrow, start preparing for a visit from the 5-1 Houston Texans. Green Bay enters off back-to-back wins. Houston's lone loss this year came to Minnesota. Packers going to be wearing their new all-white uniforms on Sunday. Kick is set for noon. Meanwhile, in big NFL news, a pair of former Packers are reuniting as the Jets have traded for Raiders wide receiver Davante Adams. It means Adams and quarterback Aaron Rodgers will be on the same team again after playing together for 8 seasons in Green Bay. Turning to the Badgers, they're going to head to Northwestern coming up on Saturday. Wisconsin still upset with how last year's game in Madison went. Northwestern jumping out to a 21-point lead, winning 24-10. Coach Luke Fickell called it embarrassing in his post-game press conference that day, was still upset when he was asked about it during his weekly press conference yesterday.
They're physical. They play well up front. I thought last year they controlled the line of scrimmage, and particularly better than any other game that we played last year. When I say they controlled the line of scrimmage, that's probably me not wanting to say that they dominated us up front on both sides of the ball, but in a lot of ways they dominated us up front on both sides of the ball in a lot of other areas.
It'll be Wisconsin and Northwestern on Saturday. Kick is set for 11.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
When a company only does business in Wisconsin, that's Wisconsin Strong. Rural Mutual provides all lines of insurance, including commercial, farm, home, and auto. And your premiums stay right here to keep Wisconsin strong. Local agents, local underwriters, local claims adjusters.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, 3 Brewers have been named finalists for a Gold Glove. Shortstop Bryce Terang, right fielder Sal Frelick, and center fielder Blake Perkins. And the Bucs have just one preseason game left before the season starts. That's Thursday against Dallas. Regular season begins next Wednesday in Philly. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heilprin.
I don't know where they go from here, quite honestly, Scott, because this week with all the changes, and then you have some momentum coming in. You start to do some things better than what you had done them, and we see that from time to time when an interim head coach takes over and how a team might respond to that. But to lose the game the way they did with the penalties and the missed field goals and not capitalizing in the red zone and all those things, I just think it's going to be really hard on them. Short week now. I could see this totally unraveling. Maybe that won't happen. I know the players won't agree with that, but I could see it happening because I think they put so much into this week to winning a game and getting back on track. And the owner says this is the best team he's had in 25 years, all those things. But they didn't get it done. And so they're right back where they were. And now what's the answer for them? They don't have it.
All in all, the effort from start to finish, the focus from start to finish, is a great formula for winning football. +2 in the takeaway battle. All in all, I thought it was pretty efficient, really, in every phase of the game.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
That soundbite from Troy Aikman last night when Buck and Aikman do their little check-in with Van Pelt after the game, which I really like. I like Buck and Aikman a lot. Aikman's funny. I love one of my favorite Aikmanisms is when a call is made by an official, Troy doesn't like it, and then the rules analyst gets on the mic and is like, well, actually, Troy, this is the correct call. And then Aikman's like, thanks, but you're still wrong. And I'm Troy Aikman, so up yours. Like he did it again last night. I don't even know who ESPN has now because they used to have John Perry, but now John Perry works for the league. So I don't even know who ESPN's rules analyst is now, but that roughing the passer, the rules analyst jumps on. It's like, well, it is by letter of the law a correct call because the defender fell on the quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, with all of his body weight. And Aikman's like, okay, are you done? Stupid nerd. Shut up, nerd. Back to the game. What a stupid call. I do enjoy Troy Aikman a lot. And Aikman after the game, it's like, well, I don't know what the Jets' answer is. They don't have an answer. Well, they haven't attempted an answer today. They acquired Devontae Adams for really not a whole lot. Like a third-round pick that can get a little better or a little worse. But there's not multiple firsts. There's no premium picks changing hands here, which has me wondering, the Ravens couldn't have done that? A team with actual Super Bowl, with respect to the Jets, a team with actual Super Bowl aspirations. Maybe the Raiders traded him to the Jets because they're like, well, the Jets aren't going to do anything in the postseason, so we won't have egg on our face. But if we trade him to the Bills or the Ravens or the Chiefs, those are the teams we're trying to beat. Those are the teams we're trying to be. So maybe that, but this happens every time a player is traded, where we learn of the trade, we learn of the compensation, and then we all think, well, why didn't this team do that? Why didn't the other team do that? I don't know. Maybe Adams said, I want to go here. And the Raiders were like, fine, we'll do right by you. I don't know. But if Devontae Adams could have been had for essentially a conditional third, there were some actual Super Bowl contender teams could have used him. The Ravens, most notably, the Bills acquired Amari Cooper today, which I think is a brilliant move. And there's nobody happier today than Amari Cooper. It's like, I get out of here and I get to go play with Josh Allen on a team that's not miserable, a team that's functional, a team that's actually contending. A little breaking Packers news, by the way. And I forgot to mention this back at 4 o'clock. They worked out kicker Brandon McManus today, which does not surprise me at all. I figured they probably would. Narvison missing another kick in the mid-40s on Sunday probably pushed him over the edge. They were probably thinking about doing this earlier. They're like, all right, we don't have a choice. We got to bring this guy in. And he was exonerated, right? The league said we don't have sufficient evidence to levy discipline against this guy for the allegations. Doesn't mean that he didn't do what he was alleged of doing. Just means there was insufficient evidence to prosecute. And by the way, I'm back watching Better Call Saul again. We started season 1 of Better Call Saul is so good. And some people will tell you that it's slow and that we want the Breaking Bad stuff. I contend that the best Better Call Saul is at the beginning when he's just chasing around clients and Kim Wexler's doing law associate things and Chuck is going nuts in his house. Oh, it's so good. Season 1. Insufficient evidence. I'm back on my lawyer show grind. 608-321-1670 if you have thoughts on the Badgers. fair game. If you have thoughts on what the Jets are doing, fair game. Or any thoughts on the Packers going into the Texans game on Sunday, which is not just the biggest game of the Packers season so far, but maybe one of the most significant matchups or intriguing matchups of the NFL season, league-wide so far. 608-321-1670. It's all on the table. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant.
Hey, Cone.
I am loving this Devontae Adams trade for the Jets.
I do too. I love it. And I think it's really lame that everyone wants to beat the Jets up for this. Like, the Jets are dumb and they do a lot of dumb things, but this is a no-brainer. He will absolutely help them, and this is good for everyone involved.
And when as NFL fans are we holding the Jets to this world-class organization standard?
Right.
I mean, they're the Jets. So, speaking of Hail Marys, we saw one last night. I think this might be the Jets' final Hail Mary to save this whole Rodgers era time that they're in, because, you fired the head coach, you brought in all of these people.
Mm-hmm.
The DA might be the last piece to, if I'm Woody Johnson, I'm like, okay, Aaron, this is really it. Go do something, because we're not going to be doing anything else for you.
Well, and just thinking from the perspective of a Jets fan, Cone, there was all of this pomp and circumstance when Rodgers arrived, lots of big language, high expectations, which is fine, okay? Then he gets hurt, which isn't his fault. I don't think any Jets fan held that against him, but he did create some drama, not showing up to, going to Egypt, which is whatever. That's his choice. I don't think it cost them games, but it's just noise and an annoyance that Jets fans have to deal with. Then the coach gets fired, which is seismic. Let's not undersell how significant that is. The coach gets fired, and then they trade for Devontae Adams, and the Jets are 2-4, their season's slipping away, and Rodgers is farting around on McAfee's show like, hey, look who I have with me here. Like, if they don't start winning games, Jets fans are going to start to get real peeved if they aren't already. Like, yeah, you're right. This is probably the last card that Rodgers and the Jets have to play to get this thing back on track.
Yeah, and they really should have won that game last night.
100%.
That is just killer. That I was rooting for the Jets.
I was too.
That Hail Mary at the end of the half was reminiscent. And Rodgers, I thought, outside that last throw to Mike Williams, played pretty well.
They did too. I mean, he almost had 300 yards, right? That's something that he hasn't done in a long time. I didn't need to see the Bills win. I know the Bills are good. I know Josh Allen is good. They will have lots of meaningful games. They're going to make the playoffs. I want the Jets to stay in this thing. I want to see them win a couple of these games. They should have beat Denver. They definitely should have won last night. I can't remember who they played last week in between. I guess it doesn't matter. But that's right. I'm not going to go so far as to say the Jets should have won that game. They had opportunities. They should have beat the Broncos, and they should have won last night.
Yeah, absolutely. And they'd be in first place in the AFC East. And the AFC is really not that great outside of the heavy dogs. So I'm still giving the Jets, I think they can still very much compete for the wild card. And I'm, as a fan of football, as a lover of Aaron Rodgers, I'm happy to see him together with DA once again.
I am too. I think it's going to be fun to watch.
For the product.
It's great for the product. It's great for the talk show. And to get him out of Vegas, where he was doing nobody any good. We didn't get to watch him. Fantasy owners weren't getting anything out of him. And you could say, well, he's being rewarded for bad behavior for being traded out of there. Okay, whatever. Shut up, nerd. Like, I want to see him on a good team playing meaningful football games.
Yeah, it's the Raiders. I mean, they're in the same, class as the Jets. And last thing, if the Raiders are selling, call about Max Crosby, please. Brian Gutekunst, please.
Yeah.
Offer up the farm, offer up whatever. Give them some stock. It seems like they're a little cash strapped right now. They could use some, stocks and bonds, and that's exactly what a Packers investment is. So
yeah. God, I love that. It's a good call, Cone. I appreciate it. It's Cone Roller, everybody. Yeah, I'm interested to see. Hassan Reddick was given an opportunity to explore trades today. I got to think the Lions would be calling. There's also this strange provision that Josina Anderson reported today. So I went back, I reverse engineered this. So Josina Anderson on the 1st of October reported, hey, there's another pick in play in the Hassan Reddick deal. There's another pick. It's conditional. And this was 2 weeks ago. She said, didn't really know what the conditions were, but there's another pick floating out there in the event that Reddick is traded again, which is a weird provision to put in a trade. It's like, hey, we're going to trade you this player, but if you trade him again, we want we want protections, which is odd. It was almost the Eagles going, look, I don't think the Jets are going to pay this guy, and he's not going to go for it. So there's a chance that they might end up flipping him. Let's work some language into the contract that the Jets will almost certainly just ignore, and we might end up getting a pick. Turns out that if Hassan Reddick is traded to an NFC team, that kicker kicks into place, and the 2026 second round pick of the Jets goes to the Eagles. A second round pick. That's not nothing. So if that is true, and I'll go back and I'll make sure I didn't miss anything new from Josina Anderson because I don't follow her. I was just seeing the tweets. Trading Hassan Reddick to Detroit becomes not super attractive for the Jets because it costs them a really good pick. Trading that player to the AFC is much more likely. Or just trying to bring him back. If they're all in to win, just pay him, for God's sake. You signed Alan Lazard. You're letting Aaron Rodgers go to Egypt. You fired a coach. You employ Nate Hackett. You just acquired Devontae Adams. Hassan Reddick is an excellent edge rusher. Just pay him. Whatever. Again, the Jets are stupid for a lot of things. I don't think acquiring Devontae Adams is one of those stupid things, but there's a laundry list of other things that we can knock. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Eric on I-90.
Eric on I-90. Good evening, Eric.
Good evening. How are you?
I am excellent. Having a great night. I appreciate the Jets giving us content once again.
Wow. What content. Man, you just can't ask for more. That Hail Mary, I knew it was going to I knew it was going to be touchdown. I knew it. Didn't you know it?
Yes.
You knew it was going to be a touchdown.
Especially when they were showing
feeling, right?
highlights of all his previous Hail Marys. Yeah.
Right. Definitely, without a doubt. And now you got Devontae Adams going to the Jets. Did you see that on who's the show he always goes on?
Pat McAfee.
Did you see it on Pat McAfee?
Yeah, it's like it's the image of Rodgers coming up on the show and then Adams like peeking over his shoulder. That's the type of FaceTime that you get from a buddy who's like, guess what? We're engaged. And then the woman is over his shoulder, or like she's pregnant and then she appears. Like that's what it looks like. It's really kind of bizarre.
It's kind of bizarre. And then he was sitting there with a smirk on his face, to begin with. And you're like, well, why would you be sitting there smirking, after what you just said?
Yeah.
So,
and the smirk, again, if I was a Jets fan, it's like, dude, we're 2-4.
Right.
You've had 3 chances to lead a comeback to win a game. You just got the coach fired and you're pleasuring yourself on the Pat McAfee show because you got your buddy traded into town.
Right. It was, I couldn't believe it. If you were a Jets fan, right? But nobody's ever accused Aaron Rodgers of not being an asshole.
Yeah.
So you can't, it's just par for the course, right?
Yes, I would think so. But it's better. I mean, Eric, you play fantasy football, right?
I do.
Yeah, like I have Devontae Adams. He's been on my team. I'm like, what do I do with this guy? I actually tried to trade him for Xavier Worthy a couple weeks ago. Sell high, or as high as I thought maybe he would be. Now he's more fantasy viable. There's going to be a reason to watch the Jets a little bit more. Like I just think this is better for everybody.
Oh, he's a lock for starting him this week, right? I mean, you're starting him.
Yeah, right? we learned it was announced that although Adams has been dealing with a hamstring, he's going to make his Jets debut Sunday night against the Steelers.
Well, here's another thing too. Do you think Devontae Adams maybe have sweetened the pot for the Raiders a little bit money wise, saying, I'm only going to take this much if I go to the Jets?
Well, they restructured. Yeah. So they restructured. They added some void years, lowered his cap hit this year. And I saw the report was they're going to reopen or discuss his future with the team after this year, which that's what I'm curious about. Like if Rodgers retires after this year, which kind of feels like if this is how they're playing, I don't see why he'd come back. He'll drag it out. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know why he'd come back and get the pulp beat out of him. Then what does Devontae Adams do?
Exactly. They don't have any offensive line. I mean, that's what he's in for all season. That's what he's in for. Just getting pummeled. But so you're watching Better Call Saul again.
Yeah, again. Have you seen it?
I have seen it, and I've watched it twice, and the first season is really good the second time around.
It's so good.
It moves really fast. When you come off Breaking Bad into Better Call Saul, you're like, this is very slow, right? But you come into Better Call Saul, just the second time around, you can see how fast it moves. And I mean, they're right into Tuchel right out of the gate, right?
Yeah, episode 1. You get a dose of Tuco.
Right.
And you meet Mike, I think, in episode 1 too, in the parking booth, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Right.
People
And
are mad
Tuchel
because we
is,
don't see Gus Fring in the first 3 episodes. And that's just today's generation,
No.
Eric. We want everything. We want it right now.
No, I watched it the second time. Have you seen it the first time?
Yes.
All right. So I watched the second time up into the black and white. I didn't like the last season that much.
It's
But,
important to realize where it goes and what happens. A little bit of a Debbie Downer.
Right.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Right. But, the Lalo and all that stuff. Lalo, what a great character. I just love him. I just wish I could be him.
Good looking guy, right?
Well, he's a good looking guy, and he's always like, when there's a really dangerous situation, he's just kind of chuckling. He's like, look at this guy. Look at, he's like, look at him. He might die. It's kind of, I like the character a lot.
A good mustache.
But anyway,
yeah.
Yes. And then, and you had a good time down in the district.
Yeah, and I texted my buddies today. I'm like, I'm already, because fly fishing season closed today, I believe at noon. And it opens on January 1st. I got to be back before spring. I'll be back down there kicking around because I like fishing in the winter, assuming it's not -10 outside.
You're gonna have to get one of those extra helmets that those NFL guys wear for winter that they're wearing already. They look like big winter caps.
Guardian caps
over the top of their helmets. Yeah, don't they?
Yeah.
I'm like, what's that guy wearing a winter cap for?
A little bit last night. Yeah, was it I don't know if it was it Taylor Rapp? Eric, I gotta run. I appreciate the call. We'll talk more Better Call Saul. And you're right about Tony Dalton. Lalo Salamanca. He sounds so brilliant speaking English and Spanish. Like it's just yes, you're right about Lalo Salamanca. Yes, the Guardian caps. The dude was flying around the safety last night with a garden cap just with reckless abandon. He's got that extra little bit of padding. It's like, man. By the way, the Josina Anderson, just to clarify, so she tweeted on the 1st of October. This is 2 weeks ago. I'm told a Jets 2026 second round pick is conditionally involved in the trade that sent Hassan Reddick to the Jets from Philly, per sources. My understanding is that said condition is dependent upon the specifics of where Reddick lands if traded again. That's the part of that's the part that is important and provides additional context to the protracted situation now. The Reddick trade was reportedly only involving a 2026 conditional third. So there's a third and a second. She followed up today and said, news, I'm told the Eagles will get a 2026 second round pick from the Jets if Hassan Reddick gets traded to an NFC team, per sources. That's the other condition involved in the trade for the Reddick trade that was reported in the tweet from nearly 2 weeks ago from below. Okay. Which would mean if I'm the Jets and I got to trade Hassan Reddick again, I'd like to avoid sending him to the NFC, which makes things complicated for the Lions, who we all right away assumed would be in the Hassan Reddick business after losing Aiden Hutchinson. Just an interesting wrinkle to keep in mind. Let's take a 3-minute break. We'll talk more Jets, Devontae Adams. I have some Packers takes as well, including one about Christian Watson that we didn't get to last night. And coming up to wrap up the show, a little Division III football talk. I know it's not WEAC Wednesday. It's 24 hours early, but Coach Clayt Birmingham, UW Stout, they upset Whitewater on Saturday. We'll connect with him for the last 10 minutes or so and hear about that really historic outcome and a really special day in Menominee at Don and Nona Williams Stadium. So that's all coming up next. It's the Wisco Sports Show.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Wisco Sports Show, rolling on. Appreciate it. You can call and text the show, 608-321-1670. Jared in DeForest says, next season, if Rodgers is done, is a Packers reunion on a respectable veteran deal in the cards for Adams and the Packers. Might be interesting. I feel like Devontae Adams at this stage in his career should just become a hired gun year by year. If, in fact, Rodgers retires at the end of this year. And I'm not trying to speculate, and I'm not trying to usher him out of the league. I hope Rodgers plays as long as possible. But if the season continues on this trajectory and they end up, say, 6-11, like, why would he come back? You know what I mean? Like, why? What benefit now? Now with Adams there, it might change things a little bit, right? The only thing that I know for certain about Rodgers' future is it will not be clearly communicated in a quick and efficient manner. This bench will be dragged out. And I'm kind of here for it. Because I want to see the Jets go through that. Because honestly, they get what they deserve. You trade for Aaron Rodgers when he's waffling on retirement, then prepare to be waffled. So it's the same with the Browns. It's like, oh, the poor Browns, they're saddled with this Deshaun Watson contract. It's not like these allegations appeared when he arrived in Cleveland. You traded for this guy. It's not like Aaron Rodgers didn't waffle about retirement. Bro was in a darkness retreat, which there's nothing wrong with that. But he's been very public, very active talking about, how he's unsure about how long he wants to play. So the Jets get to wear that. And that's the price for having a real quarterback because you can't draft one of your own. Cone Roller texts in, says, are you watching the new season of Outer Banks? I cannot watch that show. I've tried. It doesn't mean that it's not good. It's just sometimes there's a show that everybody likes and you try to watch it and you're like, I can't get my arms around it. It's not that I don't understand it. It's just that my eyes and brain and heart consume this and they don't buy it. I can't buy it. I don't know. It doesn't work for me. Same with The Bachelor, by the way. Love Survivor. It's been a very good season so far. Tribal Council was electric last Wednesday. You thought it was one person and then you thought it was another and then it turned out it was neither of them. Like Survivor, I love. The Bachelor, I wish reality TV's good. I wish I could get there. I just can't. I watch it. I'm like, this seems like a big bit to me. And everyone's taking it really seriously, and it seems like a bit. I can't get my arms around it. Outer Banks, much the same. Thank you for the question, Cone. Duncan Holman says Troy Aikman and Joe Buck were pleasuring each other. I loved this commentary from Aikman after the game last night. And I love when he stuffs rules analysts proverbially in lockers.
I don't know where they go from here, quite honestly, Scott, because this week with all the changes, and then you have some momentum coming in. You start to do some things better than what you had done them, and we see that from time to time when an interim head coach takes over and how a team might respond to that. But to lose the game the way they did with the penalties and the missed field goals and not capitalizing in the red zone and all those things, I just think it's going to be really hard on them. Short week now. I could see this totally unraveling. Maybe that won't happen. I know the players won't agree with that, but I could see it happening because I think they put so much into this week to winning a game and getting back on track. And the owner says this is the best team he's had in 25 years, all those things, but they didn't get it done. And so they're right back where they were. And now what's the answer for them? They don't have it.
Dude, the fact that Woody Johnson, correctly or incorrectly, thinks that this is the best Jets team he's seen in the 25 years that he's owned the team, that's just pathetic. Like, really? Not one? Mark Sanchez and Rex Ryan took these teams to conference championship games. Not one? This team's not even that good. They're a plucky, kind of fun side story. I hadn't seen Rodgers' commentary from after the game last night in his press conference until this last break. I bookmarked it. And sorry, because of the way the audio works, if you're watching on the live stream, you're not going to be able to hear this. It's only 35 seconds. You can go look it up if you want. But for our radio audience, this is what Rodgers said after the game last night. By the way, specifically about the interception. So I'm sure on some level, all of that is true. The ball just seemed like it was underthrown. And maybe it was underthrown because he's like, okay, the only place that I'm going to be able to throw this is, I don't know. 2 games in a row now, first against the Vikings and last night against the Bills, a Jets potential game-winning drive ended because Rodgers threw a de facto shot pass to Mike Williams. I prefer to avoid jump balls as often as possible. Again, I've told you, if I was an offensive coordinator, my goal in every game plan that I cooked up, how can we navigate opening kick to when the clock hits 0? How can we navigate 4 quarters of offensive football only needing 3, maybe 4 if the opponent's really good? I only want 3 or 4 moments where my quarterback has to make an unbelievable throw. I don't want to have to rely on quarterback and wide receiver being telepathically connected. I don't want to rely on that crap. Now, sometimes you have to. Red zone, 4th down, against a really, really good defense that doesn't give you many openings. Fine. Got to have a play at the end of the game. I'm not throwing shot plays to Mike Williams. And the throw against the Vikings wasn't even a good one. So Rodgers is probably on some level fed up with Mike Williams. Reportedly, they're shopping him for trade, to which the rest of the NFL is going, okay, dude. Yeah, you put him on the market. Go ahead. Put that stained mattress on Facebook Marketplace. I'm sure there'll be a ton of demand. Like, yeah, we'll get, no, hold on. Let me get to my phone. Mike Williams is available. Please. Let me get Woody Johnson on the phone. Get Joe Douglas on the phone right away. But don't act like that end of the game that was Mike Williams' fault. Rodgers threw it at the dude's ankles. And last night, I don't know, Mike Williams supposed to go to the red line. In any event, it's 3rd and 17. There's tons of time on the clock, and we're sending the entire friggin' offense 40 yards down the field. It's not a good offense. And I know Rodgers probably went to bed last night thinking, well, if Mike Williams had just run the correct route, we would have won. Okay, but think about what you're attempting to do. Think about it. It's like you shouldn't have to rely on that play working. There's got to be an easier way to run an offense. There has to be. There needs to be. Otherwise, the Jets are barely going to win any more games the rest of the year, even with a soft schedule in a lesser division. Although if Tua comes back, Tyreek Hill fantasy owners, like myself, Devon Achan owners. Is it Achan? Achan? I confuse it with the fast guy from The Boys, which is a show, for the record, that I also don't like at all. No offense to those who do. It's not my bag. Soft division, soft conference, and still, if the Jets keep running an offense like this, Rodgers can bitch that his wide receiver's in the wrong spot, and maybe he was, but that is just a tiny little symptom of a much bigger problem, much bigger disease, even plaguing this Jets offense. 608-321-1670. I want to talk about Christian Watson next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've been, with Rome every step of the way. I mean, he knows how I feel about him, and just hit the impact that he makes when he's out there with us. So obviously, just to have him go out there and be the Rome that we know he is, and make plays, I'm super excited.
There's Christian Watson after the game on Sunday. He said last week, talking about Romeo Dobbs' situation with the Packers, whether you believe it was frustration related to the game plan, which I completely believe because it was reported by multiple people and it makes sense. I don't doubt that he was going through some things mentally. Maybe something was going on in his personal life, but it manifested at work because of the game plan. And then he didn't show up for practice. And that doesn't just go away. We don't just get to put that to the side because, he might be struggling with his mental health or there might be something going on in his personal life. Okay. Sympathetic to that. Hope it works out, but you still got to show up for work. And that's why the Packers suspended him. If the Packers believed otherwise, they wouldn't have suspended him, right? So we could believe what we want about the Romeo Dobbs situation, but as we talked about it last week, I said, the number one thing that's going to make this go away? Just win on Sunday. Play a great game and get Romeo Dobbs a couple catches. In fact, maybe 2 touchdowns. Wouldn't that be great? And that's exactly what happened. So the Packers have, and they've had the last couple of weeks, I've looked ever since the Vikings game, coming out of the Vikings game, coming out of the Rams game, coming out of the Cardinals game, coming out of each of these last 3 games, the Cardinals, the Rams wins, the Vikings a loss. I've come out of all of the last 3 games thinking and believing they have an opportunity to take another step this week. They have an opportunity to take another step. I think they continue to just get opportunities week by week to take another step, to advance, to get healthier, to move past drama, to move past this, to improve at this, to get better at that. And they have. And they're going to have to improve and grow and take yet another step if they want to beat Houston this weekend. But getting over this Romeo Dobbs thing with a commanding win over the Cardinals at home, in which Romeo Dobbs catches 2 touchdowns, that's significant. That's important. And that's them taking an opportunity to get past this. I was really impressed, as we talked about yesterday, with Christian Watson. Speaking basically as a proxy for Romeo Dobbs last week, I was really impressed. Just what he had to say, the way that he delivered his points, the way that he spoke about a really tough situation. I'm impressed with Christian Watson. He needs to stay healthy for this offense to be the best version of itself. And he also needs to stay healthy because I think at this moment in time, he has an inside track on being a leader on this offense. And they need a leader on this offense. It's great to have a really young team, and it's great to have an offense where everyone shares in the success. And that's great. The way the Packers have built this roster, there are very few drawbacks, but there are a few. Number one, there's a lot of mouths to feed, guys who are trying to get paid. We saw that present with Romeo Dobbs on some level last week. When everyone's really young, there may also be a little bit of a leadership void because nobody's been in the league that long. Nobody's been on the Packers that long. I don't think Josh Jacobs could be that guy because he just got here, although he's a veteran, quote unquote. I don't know that an offensive lineman can lead as effectively as a quarterback, a running back, a wide receiver, just because they're not as visible. I think Jordan Love can be a leader. He seems to be really liked by everyone around the locker room. I have no qualms or doubts with his leadership, but they need someone else. And I think they need it to be Christian Watson, just based on his comments, how he said what he said, the way that he spoke on behalf of Romeo Dobbs last week. They need it because when this team deals with a bad injury, or they deal with a frustrating loss late down the stretch, or they're trailing by 10 points in a playoff game that they're supposed to win, you need leaders, you need voices, you need mature figures in that locker room who can speak and have everyone else listen, who can speak and have everyone else respond. And maybe this is a conversation to have with Mike Clemens next time he's on. But I just don't know who those voices are on offense. I don't know who those leaders are on offense. And I'd like to think Jordan Love, just kind of by default, the position that he plays, his age matches those around him. With Rodgers at the end, that wasn't the case, right? He was so much older, and that's not his fault. That's just a byproduct of being on the same team for a long time. Rodgers became a victim of his own success in that regard, right? But I think Christian Watson needs to be that guy. Christian Watson after the game on Sunday, just for a little background and just to hear his voice a little bit more, talking about how exciting it was to watch Romeo Doubs make plays.
Just knowing Rome and knowing how he feels and his passion and love for football. I mean, you see it by his play style. I mean, he'll die about football. So I mean, I know every single play he's giving everything that he got, and I know that he's excited. He don't always give the indicators, but I mean, he loves football. So anytime he get to go out there and make plays, I know he's excited.
I just want to see him continue to stay healthy, continue to play well, and continue to grow as a leader, because I think the Packers need him to be one. Rick on the live stream says Jaden Reed is another candidate. Yeah, you could. Jaden Reed's been here one season less, which only matters so much. I'm just thinking of guys who have been here a while. Christian Watson's played with multiple quarterbacks. He's played in different iterations now. He's just got a little bit more seasoning than Jaden Reed. And you might say, well, everyone can be a leader. Yeah, but if everyone's a leader, nobody is. You need one or two guys on offense. Maybe Jordan Love is one, and maybe Christian Watson can be the other. When we come back, we're going to wrap the show. A little more college football talk. Coach Clayt Birmingham, UW Stout, they knocked off Whitewater on Saturday for the first time in almost 25 years. Pretty cool scene at Don and Nona Williams Stadium. He's going to join the show. We'll wrap things up next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Wisco Sports Show. Last couple of minutes. My name is Grant Bills. Twitter at Wisco Grant, the live stream, YouTube, Facebook, up and running as well. A lot of great calls today. Appreciate Zach Heilprin. If you missed our Badgers conversation, you can hear that. The podcast will go up just after 6 o'clock because the show's got to finish first. So I'll wrap it up here in a few minutes and then I'll get the podcast up so you can catch Zach's conversation. If you want to go back and watch it on the live stream as well, Zach, kind enough to appear on video as well. And I always appreciate Zach for that. Speaking of joining us on video, a little more college football talk, the D3 level. Significant, one could even say, nay, historic result in the WEAC this last weekend. UW Stout up in Menominee beating Whitewater for the first time since 2001 and the first time in a longer tenure than I thought. Coach Clayt Birmingham, I didn't know he'd been there 15 years. He'd been there a while. But imagine coaching somewhere for 15 years, getting your first win over a conference opponent 15 years, a decade and a half into your tenure. A significant result, a historic result, definitely worth talking about. I recorded earlier with Clay. Here's our conversation. We're here with Coach Birmingham, UW Stout football. I always like a chance to talk WEAC football. Anytime there's a huge result, a huge matchup between two highly ranked teams or a massive upset like we saw on Saturday, UW Stout beating UW Whitewater for the first time in 23 years, for the first time since 2001 and the first time in your 15-year tenure at UW. Tell me this. Tell me your mindset coming into Saturday. You guys had a tough loss to Carroll to open, but then you won 3 straight, including your conference opener. What was your mindset Saturday morning? What was your feel for your team going into that game?
We felt good. I think the first loss, I think, was a blessing in disguise for us, if you will. Kind of knocked us down, told us how, showed us how to prepare. We had a young team, a lot of young first-year starters out there, and the first game was kind of a wake-up call to see how they got to prep for the rest of them. So the guys have been playing good. I mean, all we ask them to do is improve every week. That's what you got to do with the young team. And we've always been close to Whitewater. It's games that we felt we look back and we if we just did this or made that play, we could have got them. And it's just all the stars aligned the right way, and our kids played great. And thought our coordinators both had a great game plan against them. And the kids went on and executed. So it was good, and it was a fun game. I thought our guys were ready. I think we have such a young team. I think they don't know any better. So they just showed up and played ball.
So 27 points in the first quarter total. How many games have you coached where there's been that much scoring, let alone between, two teams and an opponent like Whitewater? 27 first quarter points total. Did you know that there was maybe something in the air? There was something going on in this game after that first frame with all the offense, and it was very clear that both teams came ready?
Well, it just means there's a lot of explosive plays and big plays, probably scoring quick. So, we matched each other back and forth the full first quarter. So it was a game of explosives early.
It's funny. I was looking back through the drive recap and, blow by blow what happened. When there's a big upset, you'd expect, maybe a special teams played a difference or a couple tournament. You guys turned the ball over early and you gave up a long kickoff return. That's not, I would think, a recipe for a big time upset. You guys maybe even could have made more plays or made fewer mistakes in this game. And that's just pretty mind blowing for an opponent that you haven't beaten that long, that you spotted them that kickoff return early. I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah, we had one turnover. We took the ball away from them 3 times, which was big. They got that explosive kickoff return. And then really their other 2 touchdowns came on, one a coverage bust. So I gave them a long where Tamir made it down the sideline on a wheel play. And then the other one was just a deep shot one-on-one with the guy that just, they got behind us a little bit. And so you take away those 3 explosive plays, and but that's why you play. I mean, we had explosive plays too, and that's what we tell our guys. The team that's going to make those 4 or 5 plays a game, that's going to be the difference in the game. So just glad we made some explosives as well.
It was really impressive. You had explosives. You also had long drives. You had a 7 or a 10 play drive in the first quarter. You won the time of possession. It's not like you guys, you had some explosives to your point, but you also put together long drives, which means you're executing, you're avoiding mistakes. You faced 15 third downs and executed and converted on more than half of those. It's not just like you guys lived on big plays. You moved the football on Whitewater really for the whole game.
No, it was a good game plan, like I said, by our offense coordinator and the offensive staff. It's one of those things where you got to control the game against a good team and shorten the game a little bit too. And that's what we tried to do, and they executed it. It's a pretty typical game plan for going against a really good opponent, which we're going to have to go against a bunch of them the next 5 weeks.
Well, and I was going to say there's no shortage of quality opponents in the WEAC, so that's nothing new to you guys, even though the opponent is Whitewater, which might carry a little bit more prestige. In a high-strung game, and you can feel that game, that upset in the palm of your hand, you can feel that it's right there. How lucky do you feel as a head coach when you're making decisions and you're trying to navigate your way through 4 quarters of football? How lucky do you feel to have a kicker that you can trust to hit 4 or 5 field goals over the course of a game?
Yeah, the last 2 weeks, he's been 5 of 6. So he's made 5 field goals in the last 2 games. Now, that's not how we want to end our drives. We want to see him finishing and putting him in the end zone, and that's always been the last couple of weeks has been kind of a goal of ours we need to get better at. And but if we don't, at least we got an accurate guy that can get it through the yellow things. So he's doing a great job. Cool's been with us for a long time. He's a senior, ice in his veins, and just he's a team guy. He's not a typical kicker, man. The guy benches like 315, and he's one of the boys. So he's a good one.
Well, and with the last name like Cool, that would be. I don't know what a bad name for a kicker would be. Nothing comes to mind, but that seems like it would be a good name for a kicker.
Cool Hand Luke, right? You don't get better than that for a kicker.
Exactly. And I wanted to ask you as well about Richie Murphy from Cameron. He had 2 interceptions, and you're a former defensive back, a secondaries coach, back when you were an assistant throughout your career. So what did that mean, watching a guy create 2 huge turnovers at a position that you've coached and played at a high level in the past?
Yeah, Richie's good. I mean, we have a really good secondary. They're young, but Richie's basically our only senior on the field right now, and we challenged him. To be honest with you, the year prior to this, down at Whitewater, they picked on him. So we kind of challenged him and maybe told him something that got him a little irritated, but stepped up his game, and he rose to the challenge, and he came to that game with a vengeance, and he wanted to prove everybody wrong, and that's just the competitor he is. I remember recruiting Richie, and he wasn't even on our radar when I recruited him. He was a basketball guy, and I went to watch a different recruit play, and they just happened to be playing against Richie, and I watched how he played on the court and how competitive he was. That I walked down after the game and I said, "Hey, you ever think about playing football?" He's like, "Well, I'm thinking about playing basketball." I said, "You need to come on a visit, and you got to check out football first." And lo and behold, we got him, and that's what he does. He's a basketball player on grass, and he can lock people down, and he does a good job.
How much of that position is mental, coaching that position, but then also going out and executing? You said they picked on him last year in Whitewater, so you obviously players develop and they grow and they perfect their game from year to year. But how much is just having a better mental approach, and like you said, maybe putting some phrases or some thoughts in his head to get him in the right state to go out and compete on Saturday?
Yeah, no question. I mean, whenever everybody knows when you play defensive back, you better have a really short memory. So, and most good ones do. And, we're the last line of defense. So when we screw up, everybody sees it. So, but he's doing a great job. Our whole secondary is doing a good job. We're forcing turnovers. Now the challenge is to keep that going with getting some picks.
Coach Birmingham here, UW Stout. Hey, just to wrap up, how do you move forward from a result like this? Because it's not like you can downplay this result to a certain degree, but everybody knows this is something that hasn't been done in your tenure there. It hasn't been done in more than 20 years. So how do you move on and navigate a schedule in the WEAC? There's no easy games. This league is a nightmare week to week.
Yeah, the only thing you do is just turn on the next film when the Toronto River Falls this week, and that's motivation for our players enough to think, holy man, these guys are good. And it's going to be another dogfight. And then when they're done, we're going to turn on the next film. And these guys know that one game doesn't make or break you. It's just we got to come to play. And if that was the case, we'd have been done after the first game against Carroll, because I think we were probably the favorites in that one. And they upsetted us. And they did a good program. They did a good job. So we've been on both ends of it. But we're humble. We got good guys. We got mature kids. And we're just up for the next challenge.
Awesome. Well, and you kind of have no choice in this league. It's
right.
You have no option but to turn the page very quickly. Do you ever, I'm just curious, coaching in the WEAC, do you ever have to remind your guys, sometimes the team needs to be humbled. Does your team ever need, the other side of that coin? Do you ever need to remind your guys, this is one of the toughest athletic leagues in the country, right? It might feel like we're struggling on a week-to-week basis, but if you were to go play teams from elsewhere, if you were to be in another conference, the perspective of playing football in this league has to be pretty unique relative to most other conferences and leagues around Division III, right?
Yeah, they know that, and I think that's why they came and played in this league, and I think that's why a lot of people do come into this league, and they respect it. So it's very highly competitive, and it's just as good as some Division II schools. So, it's a fun league, and it's always been a fun league, and don't get any easier. So you can get more gray hair up there, but just keep cutting it shorter.
Awesome.
But it's a fun league.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the time, Coach. Congrats again on the win, and good luck with River Falls coming up this weekend.
All right. Thank you.
Covering WEAC games. I miss being on the call and the broadcast for UWL games with Drew Kelly down on WKTY and lacrosse. And it's a really cool league. In fact, Colton Bartholomew, who was on with Bill earlier today, we were DMing a little bit because he saw I was having a WEAC coach on. He's like, man, anytime you need someone to come on and talk about the WEAC, I am in. Please ask me. I am there 100%. So nice, wide ranging, let's say, selection of topics tonight. Zach was excellent on the Badgers earlier. So if you missed that conversation, that's one part of the show you definitely need to go back into the podcast to find. He was on about 25 minutes into the show, about 4:35. You can find that. Also, reaction and a couple of calls on the Davante Adams trade. I think it's fun. And I think it's a little disingenuous, everyone today on sports radio and sports TV beating up on the Jets for doing dysfunctional things. It's like, right, a third-round pick to bring in Davante Adams to play with Aaron Rodgers. They've already decided they're all in with Rodgers. That's dumb. That's dysfunctional. I think that's smart. What's it going to hurt? Davante Adams would have helped them win the game last night. That's what weirds me out is some people have reacted today. Again, other shows you might not care, but just generally speaking across sports media today, people are like, I watched the Jets last night. Their issue wasn't wide receiver. It's like, yeah, but if they would have had Davante Adams last night, I think they would have won. Are we really debating that? Like, it would have made a difference in the red zone. Would have made a difference when the game gets tight at the end. Like that, he absolutely would have helped them win last night's game, which is a game they kind of needed to win to, at the very least, keep their season on track, I guess, for lack of a better term. Podcast will go up in just a little bit. Badgers fans, Zach was great. Go listen to it. Enjoy. What is even going on tonight? NBA preseason? Baseball? Maybe the Jets will make some other